A significant hotspot has been developing in Asia for decades, involving the assertion and, at times, the creation of new territories, along with the reconfiguration of national borders, most of which unfolds at sea. Positioned to the east is the formidable Pacific, while to the south lies the crucial Indian Ocean. This focal point is none other than the South China Sea, a maritime region that holds the potential to trigger future conflicts. Importance of South China Sea. Encompassing an expanse exceeding 3 million square kilometers, the South China Sea is bordered by China, Taiwan, the Philippines, Brunei, Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Singapore. The seabed beneath holds an estimated 12 billion barrels of oil and 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. The region boasts expansive reefs and abundant fisheries, with numerous uninhabited small islands scattered throughout. Due to its strategic location, the South China Sea holds immense trade and military significance, prompting nations to vie for control. China and Taiwan assert considerable portions, while the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia also have overlapping claims. Adhering to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, most nations recognize territorial waters extending up to 200 nautical miles from the coast, known as the EEZ, Exclusive Economic Zone. With the EEZ, nations enjoy exclusive rights over trade and resource, effectively treating it as sovereign territory. Importance of exclusive economic zones. The Exclusive Economic Zones, EEZ, hold paramount importance, as any resources discovered within 200 nautical miles of a nation automatically grant exclusive rights. Nations aspire to expand their control over EEZ to secure additional reserves of oil and natural gas. In the South China Sea, nearly every nation adheres to the UN Charter to delineate their EEZ, with the notable exception of China. China asserts historical claims dating back to the 15th century, marking its territory with a vague and imaginary boundary known as the 9-dash line. Disregarding the UN Charter on EEZ, China lays claim to the entire South China Sea under the 9-dash line, encroaching upon the sovereign waters of their nations, which consistently resist China's expansionist endeavors. There are three major points of conflict in the South China Sea: the Spratly Islands, the Paracel Islands, and Scarborough Shoal. The Spratly Islands are subject to competing claims from China, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Vietnam, situated near the center of the South China Sea. Asserting control over these islands enables nations to extend their exclusive economic zones. While the claimant nations, except for China, have constructed small huts and infrastructure on the Spratly Islands, China has undertaken more extensive measures. China has undertaken land reclamation efforts, converting several Spratly Islands into military bases. In 2015, China created artificial islands covering a total of 3,000 acres, significantly altering the maritime landscape around the Spratly Islands. Notably, China has established 3 air bases on the Fiery Cross, Mischief, and Subi Islands. Although China has refrained from deploying fighter jets to Spratly Islands so far, there is a potential for a change in this stance in the near future. Next, we have the Paracel Islands, situated in the western part of the South China Sea, in close proximity to Vietnam, with competing claims primarily from China. Tensions between China and Vietnam frequently escalate as both nations vie for control over these islands. Similar to the situation in the Spratly Islands, China has undertaken the construction of artificial islands in the Paracels. Beijing has established an operational airbase on Woody Island, regularly deploying J-11 fighter jets to the airstrip. Notably, Woody Island is home to nearly 1,000 residents, predominantly composed of Chinese soldiers. Lastly, we turn our attention to the Scarborough Shoal, situated in the eastern region of the South China Sea, a territory contested by both China and the Philippines. Despite lying within the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines, China asserts its ownership under the 9-dash line, leading to ongoing tensions between the two nations. Naval vessels from both countries frequently engage in confrontations, with a notable incident occurring in August when a Chinese ship deployed a water cannon against a Philippine vessel. The disputes surrounding the Scarborough Shoal have significantly strained relations between China and the Philippines, raising concerns about the potential escalation of hostilities towards a military conflict. In addition to asserting control over islands and redefining maritime boundaries, China is also actively seeking to establish an air boundary. Beijing declares the establishment of an air identification zone over the South China Sea, implying that any aircraft transiting through this zone requires Chinese authorization. Despite China's claim that their objective is not to militarize the islands, their actions contradict this assertion, escalating tensions in the region. In response, the United States has heightened its military presence, with American warships and aircraft routinely conducting patrols in the South China Sea. These patrols often encounter Chinese aggression, including the use of lasers directed at military personnel and frequent harassment of American planes by Chinese jets. Adding to the complexity, some Chinese ships have attempted to intentionally collide with American vessels in the South China Sea. China argues that the US presence is perceived as a threat, while the US maintains that it is simply adhering to the United Nations laws governing the open seas. Countries facing intimidation from China are aligning themselves with the United States, as evidenced by the Philippines, a prominent example. The Philippines regularly conducts joint military exercises with the US, and this year granted American troops access to an additional 4 bases, bringing the total to 9 across the country. Notably, 5 of these bases are situated in the north, near Scarborough Shoal. Concurrently, the Philippines is bolstering its military capabilities by placing an order for 3 batteries of the potent BrahMos cruise missile, jointly developed by India and Russia. The BrahMos boasts supersonic cruise capabilities and can be launched from both sea and land, featuring an operational range of up to 400 kilometers, proving effective in anti-shipping roles. Similarly, Vietnam, entangled in conflicts with China in the South China Sea, witnessed a recent standoff between Vietnamese and Chinese military vessels. The warships came perilously close, with the Chinese ships eventually being forced to retreat. In response to China's aggressive conduct, Vietnam is emulating the Philippines by forging closer ties with Washington, D.C. Presently, Vietnam is engaged in discussions with India to acquire BrahMos missiles. While China regards the South China Sea as an integral part of its territory, emphasizing its historical significance, other nations also consider the sea vital. Consequently, the resolution of this dispute appears unlikely in the near future. China is constructing artificial islands, prompting other nations to seek the United States as a dependable counter to China. In response, the US has increased its presence in the South China Sea. However, China possesses a geographical advantage over the US, as it is closer to all the disputed islands in the region. This proximity enables Beijing to deploy more troops and weapons, providing China with an overall advantage. Beijing employs a strategic approach to military coercion, incrementally asserting control over islands and displacing other nations. As the US becomes more deeply involved, the situation in the South China Sea is expected to grow more intricate. The US and its allies criticize China for its aggressive actions in the South China Sea, while Beijing contends that it holds historical rights to claim the territory. China is actively militarizing the islands, indicating a lack of intention to de-escalate tensions in the region. If you like this video, check the next one shown on the screen. I'm sure you'll like it. Thanks for watching.